The crisp mountain air swirled around me, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. My name is Willow. I am 30 years old, and I carry a past as rugged and unforgiving as the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, where our small town of Havenwood nestled. For years, this story has been locked away, a heavy quilt of pain too burdensome to unfold. There are events that etch themselves onto your soul, reshaping the very landscape of your heart. This is one of those. This isn't a tale of sweet tea and front porch swings, as folks might expect when a woman speaks of family. No, this is a chronicle of sacrifices hidden beneath layers of silence, and emotions buried deeper than a mountain hollow. They say love makes the world go round, that it's the foundation of a good marriage. But in the case of my mother, Daisy, and my stepfather, Caleb, I knew with a chilling certainty that love was a mere illusion, a wisp of smoke obscuring a far more sinister truth. From the moment Caleb's shadow first darkened our doorway, a discordant note resonated within me. It was a subtle wrongness, like a skipped stitch in a familiar pattern. Gradually, the horrifying realization took shape. Daisy was merely the means, the unwitting tool to unlock his true desire. I was the object of his twisted affection. My mother, a woman forged by resilience and loss, ran a small, cherished quilt shop. Daisy stitches, filled with the comforting hum of sewing machines and the vibrant hues of handcrafted quilts. My father, a logger felled by a rogue tree when I was young, had left a void that Daisy filled with unwavering devotion. She raised me, her only daughter, with a fierce protectiveness, turning her grief into a masterpiece of strength and independence. The quilt shop wasn't just a business. It was a sanctuary, a testament to her enduring spirit, a beloved gathering place in our close-knit community of Havenwood. Life flowed with a predictable rhythm. Daisy immersed herself in the colorful world of her craft, while I, a young woman on the verge of adulthood, focused on my studies. Then came college, a sprawling, imposing university in the bustling city of Asheville. It was my first taste of true freedom, a release from Daisy's loving, yet all-encompassing embrace. The world stretched before me, a vast and exhilarating canvas of possibilities. Welcome to the heartstrings and scars, where we unravel the untold stories of love, betrayal, and the life-changing lessons they leave behind. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. I met him, Caleb Thorne, not yet my stepfather, but my professor of American literature. He was charismatic, his lectures captivating, weaving tales of Southern Gothic and transcendentalism with a voice that resonated deep within my soul. He sparked within me a newfound understanding of the world, of the stories that shaped our nation. Our conversations, initially confined to the lecture hall, spilled into the cozy coffee shops of Asheville, becoming more frequent, more personal. I found myself drawn to his intellect, his passion, but then the shift, a subtle, unsettling change in his gaze. At first, I dismissed it as my imagination, the overly sensitive mind of a young woman flattered by the attention of an older, respected figure. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger, more palpable. It was in the way his eyes lingered on me, not as a professor assessing a student, but as a hunter eyeing his quarry. A silent, unspoken intimacy hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was a gaze that scrutinized, that expected something I couldn't comprehend, something that made my skin crawl. My unease blossomed into full-blown anxiety. It wasn't just his gaze. His actions, too, began to betray a disturbing undercurrent. A hand lingering too long on my shoulder during a tutorial, a deliberate closeness as we walked across the bustling campus quad. These gestures, seemingly innocuous on the surface, felt weighty, oppressive. One evening, he kept me after class, ostensibly to discuss a particularly complex passage from Faulkner. But the conversation veered away from the dense prose, meandering into personal territory, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. The air in the room thickened, suffocating me. The respect, the academic distance that should have existed between us had evaporated, replaced by a palpable tension that made my heart hammer against my ribs. I retreated. I constructed walls of polite excuses, avoiding private conversations, feigning busyness whenever he offered assistance. In lectures, I sat at the back of the hall, minimizing eye contact, sometimes arriving deliberately late to avoid any pre-class interaction. I believed, foolishly, that avoidance was the answer, that if I could simply erase myself from his line of sight, the unsettling anxiety would dissipate. For the remainder of the academic year, I maintained this carefully constructed distance. It seemed to work. The unease faded, replaced by a fragile sense of normalcy. I convinced myself that I had overreacted, that my anxieties were the product of an overactive imagination. Then came summer break and my return to Havenwood. Daisy was different. A lightness danced in her eyes. A soft smile played on her lips. She hummed quietly to herself as she worked at her quilting frame, a secret joy radiating from her very being. My curiosity was piqued, but she deflected my questions with a coy smile, claiming only that life was looking up. The revelation came one sun-drenched afternoon. We sat on the porch swing, surrounded by the vibrant blooms of summer. Daisy, her face flushed with a happiness I hadn't seen in years, announced that she had met someone special, someone she wanted me to meet. My heart soared. For years, Daisy had borne the weight of single motherhood, sacrificing her own happiness for mine. The thought of her finding companionship, of experiencing joy again, filled me with a profound sense of relief. The day of the introduction arrived. The house was meticulously arranged, the table set with Daisy's finest china. The anticipation was palpable, a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. The doorbell chimed, a sharp sound that cut through the quiet expectation. Daisy, her hands fluttering nervously, rushed to answer it. I waited, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, imagining the man. The door swung open, and there he stood, Caleb Thorne. My world fractured. The blood drained from my face, leaving me cold and numb. All the suppressed anxieties, the carefully buried unease, surged back with a vengeance, a tidal wave of dread crashing over me. The man my mother loved, the man she trusted implicitly, was the very source of my deepest fear. A whirlwind of conflicting thoughts tore through my mind. Why him? How long? Was this deliberate? The room spun. The memories of his unsettling gaze, his calculated closeness, flooded back, each one a shard of glass piercing my heart. I searched Daisy's face, desperately seeking a flicker of recognition, a hint that she understood the monstrous irony of the situation. But there was nothing, only radiant, unadulterated joy. To her, this was a simple introduction, a meeting between the two most important people in her life. She was oblivious to the storm raging within me. Caleb entered, his smile smooth, his demeanor impeccable. He greeted me with a feigned surprise, expressing his astonishment at the unexpected coincidence of my being Daisy's daughter. I mirrored his charade, forcing a smile my insides churning with a toxic mixture of fear and disbelief. Daisy, beaming, reveled in the happy coincidence of their connection. They chatted animatedly, their voices a discordant symphony to my ears. I stood frozen, a silent observer in a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. I questioned his true nature, his motives. Was this all a carefully orchestrated deception, a twisted game with me as the ultimate prize? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to support us and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. The days that followed were a carefully choreographed dance of normalcy. Caleb was the perfect gentleman, attentive to Daisy, respectful to me. There were no overt signs of his previous behavior, no hint of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface. Daisy, bathed in the glow of newfound love, was happier than I had ever seen her. Her laughter filled the house, her eyes sparkled with a youthful exuberance. Time passed, their relationship deepened. Then came the inevitable. Daisy announced their intention to marry. Caleb Thorne officially became my stepfather. The wedding was a small, intimate affair, held in the town's historic chapel overlooking the mountains. The setting was breathtaking, the scenery majestic, but all I felt was a suffocating sense of dread. I smiled. I offered congratulations. I played the part of the dutiful daughter. But inside, I was screaming. Life settled into a new, unsettling rhythm. Caleb was ever present, a constant reminder of my buried anxieties. Yet, he remained the picture of the devoted husband, showering Daisy with affection, integrating himself seamlessly into our lives. Slowly, insidiously, my doubts began to erode. I started to question my own sanity. Perhaps I had imagined it all. Perhaps my initial fears were unfounded, the product of youthful insecurity and a vivid imagination. Seeing Daisy's happiness, her unwavering trust in Caleb, chipped away at my resolve. I yearned to believe in his innocence, to embrace the normalcy of our family life. Finally, I surrendered. I accepted their relationship, offering them my blessing, a hollow gesture masking the turmoil that still simmered beneath the surface. I convinced myself that Daisy's happiness was paramount, that my own anxieties were secondary. I learned to compartmentalize, to bury my fears deep within the recesses of my mind. Years passed. I graduated from university, found a job in a small publishing house in Asheville, but spent my weekends in Havenwood helping Daisy at the quilt shop. Caleb often visited Daisy's stitches, offering assistance, his presence a constant, low hum of unease that I had learned to ignore. Or so I thought. Then came the day that shattered the illusion, the day that ripped away the carefully constructed facade of normalcy and exposed the horrifying truth. I was 22. A bout of the flu had confined me to bed, my body racked with fever, my mind adrift in a hazy fog. Daisy, concerned, had insisted I stay home from the shop. Only Caleb was there, his absence from the university unexplained. I lay in my room, the curtains drawn against the harsh sunlight, trying to find solace in sleep. The fever made me restless, my thoughts fragmented. Then, a knock on the door. Caleb entered, bearing a glass of water and 2 small white pills. "Painkillers," he murmured, his voice soft, solicitous, "to help you sleep." My head throbbed. I was desperate for relief. Without hesitation, I swallowed the pills, washing them down with the water. He smiled, a fleeting expression that sent a shiver down my spine, though I dismissed it as a fever-induced hallucination. I closed my eyes, waiting for the blessed oblivion of sleep. But it didn't come. Instead, a strange sensation crept over me, a growing heaviness in my limbs, a creeping paralysis that spread through my body like a slow-acting poison. Panic seized me. I tried to sit up, to call out, but my body refused to obey. I was trapped, immobilized, my mind racing, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs. Caleb returned. This time, he carried nothing. He stood over me, his eyes gleaming with a predatory intensity that sent a wave of icy terror through my paralyzed body. I struggled, a silent, desperate battle against the invisible bonds that held me captive. He leaned close, his breath warm on my face. His smile was no longer the gentle, reassuring expression he presented to Daisy. It was a cruel, predatory smirk, a mask of depravity that chilled me to the bone. I've waited a long time for this. Willow, he whispered, his voice a silken threat. The words hung in the air, heavy with malice. My mind reeled, struggling to comprehend the horrifying reality unfolding before me. All the buried anxieties, the dismissed fears, surged back with a devastating force. The nightmare I had tried to convince myself was a figment of my imagination had become terrifyingly real. He sat beside me, his eyes burning with a calculated lust. He recounted, in chilling detail, his obsession with me, his frustration at my attempts to distance myself, his decision to use Daisy as a means to an end. He had meticulously researched my life, my family, my vulnerabilities. He had manipulated Daisy's affections, patiently weaving his web of deception, all for this moment. Each word was a dagger, twisting in my heart. The realization that my mother's happiness, the life we had built, was a carefully constructed lie, a cruel charade designed to satisfy his twisted desires, filled me with a despair so profound it threatened to consume me. He leaned closer, his hand sliding over my paralyzed body, a touch that felt like the icy grip of death. I was utterly helpless, trapped in a prison of my own flesh, forced to endure his violation. The seconds stretched into an eternity of horror, each moment an agonizing torment. I wanted to scream, to fight, to claw my way out of this nightmare. But I was powerless. My body was no longer my own. He had stolen everything, my dignity, my sense of safety, my trust. Time became meaningless. The world outside my window faded, replaced by the suffocating darkness of my own terror. I lay there, a silent witness to my own violation, praying for it to end. Finally, it did. He rose, adjusting his clothes with a chilling nonchalance, as if nothing of consequence had occurred. He looked down at me, his eyes devoid of any remorse, any flicker of humanity. Then, he left, leaving me broken, shattered, a hollow shell of my former self. The paralysis gradually receded, replaced by a bone-deep weariness and a nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. I struggled to sit up, my limbs trembling, my body aching. I fumbled for the phone, my fingers clumsy and unresponsive. The police. I had to call the police. 911. The numbers swam before my eyes. My voice, when I finally managed to speak, was a broken whisper. They arrived swiftly, their presence a jarring intrusion into the silent aftermath of my violation. Caleb was arrested, his carefully constructed facade crumbling in the face of my accusations. He offered no resistance, his head bowed in a silent admission of guilt. Daisy arrived home to find her world shattered. The man she loved, the life she had cherished, exposed as a monstrous lie. She listened, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. As I recounted the events of that day, my voice trembling with the effort to hold back the sobs that threatened to consume me. When I finished, she collapsed, her body racked with sobs of grief and self-reproach. She blamed herself, repeating the same agonizing mantra, "I'm sorry, Willow, I'm so sorry." But no apology could undo the damage. No words could heal the wounds that Caleb had inflicted. That day marked the end of our former lives. Daisy, consumed by guilt and remorse, retreated into herself, closing Daisy's stitches and seeking solace in the solitude of the mountains. Caleb was convicted, sentenced to prison, but his imprisonment could not erase the scars he had left on my soul. I had achieved justice, but the victory felt hollow. The haunting memories, the sense of violation remained a constant, throbbing ache in my heart. From this crucible of pain, I learned a profound lesson. Silence is the enemy of healing. Speaking the truth, no matter how agonizing, is the only path to liberation. Had I confided in Daisy earlier, had I voiced my fears, perhaps this tragedy could have been averted. My mother never recovered. We talk from time to time. She is a shell. The road ahead is long and arduous. The journey of healing is a slow, painstaking process. But I am no longer silent. I will reclaim my strength, my voice, my life. The regret and pain will linger, a constant reminder of the darkness I have endured. But I will not be defined by it. I will survive. I will find peace. I will find myself again amidst these Appalachian shadows. Thank you for your time, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support us and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. Thank you.